Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Pearson Ham Q3 2024 quarterly pet insurance webinar. My name's Frances. I'm the product manager here for the insurance price tracking team at Pearson Ham. I'll begin today. For anyone who's not joined one of these before, I'll take you through a bit of background on Pearson Ham, who we are, what we do. And then we'll take a look at how the pet insurance market has moved in the last quarter and any events that have happened since June this year. Excellent. So if we're good to start, like I say, I'll begin by just a bit of background on Pearson Ham, what our data is showing and how we collect it. So Pearson Ham is a pricing consultancy. So we cover in industries in a lot of different areas. There's sort of pharmaceuticals, food and beverage, and insurance is just part of that. So the insurance pricing team in particular focuses on market tracking for premiums across a number of different insurance markets. So the way that we collect our data is through the price comparison websites. So we have a panel of genuine individuals, real consumers. We run their details through some of the main price comparison sites in the UK. So for pets, our data is coming from Compare the Market, from Money Supermarket, and as of Q3, we're also collecting prices from Go Compare as well. So this is how we source our data. The quotes are run through the journey. The price comparison sites have consented to this. They know that we're running these details, so that's with their consent. And then we collect the prices from the other end from this representative batch of individuals. From that data, we obviously have a lot of data cleansing and analysis that goes into the information that we're gathering. So there are business rules, data cleansing to make sure that we are giving an accurate view of the market, not picking up any sort of anomalous trends or outliers. We rotate the panel as well through over a 28-day period, so we don't run the same people constantly through the sites. And then from that, obviously, as you'll see, as we go through the pack, we can build up a lot of different key metrics from some of that information. And this is done on a daily basis. So if you're familiar with our insurance data portal, you can view price changes right down to a 24-hour window. Nice. So pet is only one of 5 insurance types that we are currently tracking. So I don't know if any of you have caught Stephen Kennedy's car and home insurance webinars that also go on quarterly as well. We have tracking for van insurance and travel insurance too. So for all those kinds of insurance, we're able to provide insights on pricing. And like I say, our ethos is that we're always using real people to collect the data. It's not just sort of made up profiles with fake names. They are real people that have consented to allow us to use their data so that we can get representative profiles back of the markets. And like I say, we are always collecting data with permission from the price comparison sites, so we're never breaching any terms of contract. Excellent. So with that background, we'll go into some of the trends that we've seen in pet insurance in Q3. So taking a look at the top 5 of average prices on pet insurance, this is looking at the lowest level, starting from the lowest level of cover. So from 1,000, this is for lifetime cover. During Q3, we have seen small increases, about 1.8%. We see top 5 prices have increased over the last 3 months. Most of that is coming from the strongest level of increase in July, so 1.4%. So that's the highest rate of increase that we've seen this year since January during a month. And then how that looks over the course of the year. So again, year to date, since the 1st of January, we see top 5 premiums are up slightly, 2.2% since the start of the year. So most of that has come in the second half of the year. So starting from a low point in March, we've had mostly steady increase, still fairly tentative month on month. So some sort of variation, but generally prices are trending upwards for lifetime cover. And then year on year, again, we're increasing year on year about 7.7%. So again, 2024 is contributing to less of that than we got picked up from Q4 in 2023. So there were some quite strong increases around about this time last year. And as we've gone into the current year, that's faltered a little bit. So we're not seeing such large blue bars in 2024, but we are still seeing premiums up by nearly 8% year on year. And then splitting the market out. So like I said, what we've been looking at just there is from the lowest level of cover. So starting from 1,000, how have the top 5 prices changed? You can see it's a bit of a different story, though, if you are focusing on higher levels of cover within the market. So sort of the top 5 prices that start from at least £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 worth of vet cover, you can see there are slightly stronger increases. In fact, in our data, we see that sort of the middle tier of the market, so cover starting from 3K, actually sort of has stepped up above sort of year to date inflation for other levels of cover. So about 6% increase of premiums starting from 3,000, whereas the bottom end of the market is a lot lower. We're seeing a lot less rate going in since the start of the year. And then similarly, talking about lifetime in the previous data, if you're looking at other types of pet insurance cover, so time limited, max benefit, the sort of year-on-year inflation there or year-to-date has been a lot stronger. So you're looking at sort of 12 to 13% for max benefit and time-limited premiums, which is a lot higher than we've seen for any level of cover actually on lifetime. So lifetime being the most popular level of pet insurance, but we've seen the sort of the lowest level of premium inflation. And again, different trends. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. We're going back to lifetime 1K cover, just as a standard. You can see that the premium inflation, again, shows some variation between prices for younger animals under 1 year old, and those that are 1 year or more. So there's quite a price gap there. So it's about 2% year on year. So bear in mind that sort of for the market as a whole, it's about 7% was the average. So premium inflation is almost unchanged actually, sort of between October last year and September this year, only about a 2% increase in the most competitive prices for animals under a year old, whereas older animals, that's mostly where the rate has gone in. So actually premiums for younger animals are mostly untouched, but if your pet is over a year old, you will have seen premiums go up by a lot more. Fortunately, it doesn't matter really if you have a cat or a dog. They have seen similar levels of premium inflation. So 9% for cats, 7% for dogs. Dogs have been a little bit more volatile. Remember back in March, we sort of covered it in the webinar then. We saw premiums decreasing in March. That was strongest on dogs more so than it was on cats. And we've seen a little bit of movement since then. But generally, since that low point in March, we're trending upwards at a similar rate between cats and dogs. And then between different kinds of animals, whether you're looking at crossbreeds, mixed breeds, pedigrees, again, we're just getting to a point where this will annualize out and I won't have this step change in my chart, but we can still see the effects year on year of some of those journey changes that we got from Compare the Markets back in last November. So that was a change to the options in the question set that allowed users on Compare the Markets to set the breeds of their crossbreed animals. So that's why we see premiums going up in November So that would be a genuine market change if you were going for pet insurance from Compare the Market. You would have seen your crossbreed quote go from here to here, just as a result of that journey change, allowing users to put the breed of their animal in. But since then, again, it's been very similar for all. We're not seeing too much variation in prices, though there is a slight spike just in that yellow line, which is mixed breeds, so sort of mongrels, moggies. So where we see sort of in July, you saw there was that higher bar, that 1.4% increase in the market 5. A lot of that seems to have been targeted towards mixed breeds, whereas pedigrees and to some extent crossbreeds are a lot smoother. We haven't seen so much volatility for pedigree animals. Good. And then lastly, by region, so you've got quite a range here, again, sort of between the top and bottom. So year on year, pet insurance premiums in the north of the country, so the northeast of England and Scotland, we're seeing premiums up by more than 11% versus last October. Whereas in London, I think, though it still is probably the most, double check this, but I think it's the most expensive region premium wise, but it has seen the lowest level of premium inflation. So prices are only up by about 3.6% on average in London versus last year. Brilliant. So now we sort of can see what's been going on over the last quarter and over the course of the year. We can take a look at which brands are propping that up, who is behind some of those price changes. So we've sort of anonymized some of the insurer names just for this webinar. You can see it if you're signed up to our pet insurance price tracking. So you'll have to guess the names, but you can certainly see that there's been some changes in the market over the course of the year. So this is brands sorted by their share of times in rank 1 to 6. This is starting from the lowest level of cover, so starting from 1,000 going upwards. So you can see that there are really only 2 brands that most people will see. Sort of about 80 to 90% of the time, we'll see a logo from one of those 2 insurers appearing within their top 6 prices if they have got no limit on the amount of vet cover that they need. Below that, it's quite a big drop down from insurer 2 to insurer 3. So going from 80% to less than half of that for the next largest insurer. But over the course of the year, we can see sort of between these top 2 insurers, actually their rank has swapped around. So previously in January, insurer 2 had the largest market share, and insurer 1 was the rank below that. So we can see that insurer 1 have been reducing premiums throughout the year, so that has won them sort of the top share in the market now as a result. Nice. But then it's quite a different story in terms of what logos you're seeing once you start going up the cover levels. So if you're a customer to say, I need at least £2,000 worth of vet cover, then you've got a much more sort of dispersed market here. You haven't got quite so much of a sort of a 2-player market when you're going from 2,000 or more. So you can see insurer 1 has still got quite a considerable share. So 65% of the time you're seeing a logo from insurer 1 when you're looking at higher levels of cover. But you can also see that there are some other insurers cropping up there, sort of with sort of insurer 14, 15, 11, 17, and even some sort of down the bottom that don't even feature in the top 25 for the cheapest level of cover. So there we can also see that insurer 1 has been gaining share in this cover level and plus 2. So you can see that their rank has climbed year to date. So sort of near the start of the year, they were much lower placed on this board. So certainly there is one insurer from January to now who have been pushing on their competitiveness and pushing other insurers down. And then moving up those cover levels, you've got one insurer in the top again that doesn't even feature in the top 25 for the cheapest level of cover. But again, you can see insurer 1 down here has moved up here too. So they're really pushing for a greater market share in all cover levels. So they've moved up 10 ranks versus where they were in January. Overall, insurer 2 though is quite competitive in this segment as well. So they're also second for 3K. Looking at the brands appearing for 4K or more cover, I find that you get fewer of those lower ranked ones. So this one looks a little bit more like the mix of brands that you get for 1K. So this sort of, you can see when you look at price points where insurers are positioning themselves, you get a lot of brands that sort of have the sort of the basic cover, the 1K cover, but then will also position themselves with a sort of a 2 and or with a 4K cover limit as well. So again, with those kind of step changes in price points, you get a lot of maybe the same logos appearing at this position as you did with the lowest level of cover. So insurers 1 and 2 feature near the top of the board there as well. Insurer 14 is one that stands out too. And then lastly, for the highest level of cover, so from 5,000 plus, again, insurers who are maintaining a strong presence there. So their rank has not changed. They've always been the highest share of ranks sort of between January and now. Insurer 5, though, have really moved up. You can see that they've taken 28% out in their premiums since the start of the year. So that's sort of more than a quarter taken out. So again, that's made them a lot of shares. So this is another insurer that are sort of pushing for competitive pricing. They're pushing for market share. So you can sort of see the story here. Even though you can't exactly tell whose logos there are, you can tell that there are a few brands who have really been going strong in 2024, moving some of the incumbents out the way to feature more in the top 6 versus last year. And then just to finish up with some pointers on market news that has come up in the last quarter. So any sort of changes to the markets that it's good to be aware of. So one, and this is visible in our data, is More Than stopped quoting in August. So it's about mid-August that you no longer see new business quotes appearing on any of the aggregators. So this is something, I suppose, that was anticipated since the takeover from Admiral for RSA. We can also see in our home insurance tracking More Than brands being wound down as well. So if you were to still try and go for a direct quote from More Than, they are redirecting direct traffic and renewals are now going to Admiral's own pet insurance. So previously, More Than was quite a large brand. We can see sort of this time last year in our tracking, they've got a solid share of times 1 to 6. They're sort of not the best, but somewhere in the top 10 most months. So they had sort of cover levels from 1 to 4 and 6. So those are no longer in the market. So they're sort of one of the biggest losses in 2024. And then during the last quarter as well, there's been releases from the ABI. So this is tracking demand for pet insurance. So this is for data for last year. This is 2023 that they've released in the last couple of months. So their figures are showing that demand for pet insurance is really soaring. So there was sort of record levels of pet owners taking out pet insurance in 2023. So 4.4 million policies taken out during the year. So that's an increase of 1.7 million. So I'm not sure what percentage that is, but that's quite a big chunk versus 10 years ago. So a lot more people in the UK are now taking out insurance on their pets. So of that 4.4 million that now have pet insurance, there were 1.8 million claims. So that's a 32% increase, not on 10 years ago, but on the previous year. So claims numbers are incredibly, up by nearly a third versus the previous year. And then each of those claims has got an average value of about £668 each. So that's sort of about 1.2 billion claims value for 2023. And that is against the sort of an estimated size of the pet insurance market in 2023 was about 1.75 billion, according to Mintel. So those sort of two values there. Good. And then finally, this gets dropped in for most webinars. So there's nothing new to update from the CMA investigation into pricing in the household veterinary market. So this was announced sort of back in March this year, that the CMA were going to be looking into pricing for vets. Are they pricing efficiently? Are they charging customers well? And obviously that has an effect on insurers too. So it is worth keeping an eye on this, even though if nothing significant has happened in the last quarter, we're now sort of in the evidence gathering stage between September and January. We have seen from earlier data in this year that it does have the potential to trigger reactions in pet insurance markets. So if this was announced in March, you can see a corresponding reaction in the market. March was sort of one of the biggest decreases of the year that lined up with the time that they announced this. That there are more things going on during next year. It's sort of slated to conclude around November time next year. So the final report's going to be published in October. But you've got sort of deadlines before then. You've got sort of preliminary findings, response hearings happening around Q2 in next year. So that is worth bearing in mind if you're looking to anticipate next year, see what's coming up for 2025. I think this is probably going to play a part in where we're seeing pricing going over the next 12 months. Brilliant. So I think that brings us to the end of the pack. So we can move on to Q&A. If anyone has any questions that they wanted to ask, you can drop those in the chat. And I can take a look through. So if anyone's got anything they wanted to ask, you can drop that in there. I've got one here just asking about our mix of crossbreed versus mixed breed. I can double check that for you right now, I hope, because I've got the other tab open and I can see that on our pet portal, so I can see exactly what our market mix. So we would have built the mix up sort of with reference to genuine market mixes from the price comparison sites. When we were building the profiles, that was based on genuine customer mix, so it should be representative. There we are. We're about 10% crossbreeds, 60% pedigree, 30% Mongol, which is roughly representative of a genuine quote mix going through the price comparison sites. So I'll give everyone a few more minutes to put some questions in. We've got other questions signing up. What's next for pet insurance pricing next year? So we've covered off some points there. I mentioned the CMA investigation. We saw a sort of reaction to that in March of this year. I would be surprised if there was no reaction to it next year. I think that will be one of the sort of the larger trends for 2025. You can also make of it what you will, the increase in demand for pet insurance, if we're seeing sort of big jumps in people taking out pet insurance, but we are also seeing claims frequency up by sort of more than 30% from 2022 to 2023. So with that will be coming higher claims costs. So whether premium inflation is keeping up with that, if we're only up 7.7% year on year versus sort of, probably double digits in claims inflation, that I think too will be something that features in pricing over the next year, whether sort of we're going to see claims inflation catching up and whether premiums need to follow on from that to make sure that they are well balanced. And then any changes in products appearing over the last quarter. So we can sort of see in the market exactly what kind of distinct insurance products are being presented on the price comparison sites. So interestingly, no, there's not been a huge amount of change in what's on offer. So we're still seeing, I think around half of insurance groups in the market have a cover level starting at 1K. So we haven't seen really any major insurers moving away from that. Obviously, as time goes on, 1K buys you less and less vet insurance or vet cover. But most insurers are still sticking to that price point as a base. We haven't seen anyone really upping their vet cover levels significantly in the last couple of months. We have seen a few brands increasing sort of copay amounts and the sort of the excess for policies. So we've seen a few examples where those amounts required per claim have increased. So that might again be a reaction to perhaps sort of an increasing volume of claims that some insurers have reacted by upping their excess amounts to account for that. Nice. If there's no other questions, then we will pause it there. If anyone does think of any questions, or if you'd like to see more of the data that we have, then feel free to drop me or Stephen Kennedy a line. And if we don't see you before, I will see you next quarter for the next Pearson Ham Pet Insurance quarterly webinar. Thank you.